To GC Strategies, Mr. Firth, how many employees do you have?
We have 2 employees, myself and my business partner.
Okay. And your contract with the Government of Canada lists your work as a residential address. Is that correct? I don't need the address, but is that correct?
Yeah, we had physical location downtown from 2015 to 2020, and we now have home offices.
And without getting into your detailed CV, are you programmers or app designers yourselves?
Absolutely not. We are IT recruiters. We cut our teeth in the industry working for large staffing firms.
Okay.
And we decided to go out by ourselves.
So in this context, your work for the Government of Canada, you're the broker, the middleman between the government and the service provider. Is that correct?
Essentially, yeah. They would come to us with the requirements they ask for, and we facilitate that.
And what's when we're talking about the full scope of this project, lots of publicly reported numbers, what is the commission for that intermediary, that middleman role? We're led to understand that it's 30%.
That would be at the very top end. Industry standards are anywhere from 15 to 30, depending on the skill set, the type of resource that is required.
Now, regarding the app, who approached who? So the Government of Canada reached out to you, and you did not reach out to them with respect to this contract. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
do you have a list of the department and the departmental officials who initiated that contact?
No, I do not. I thought I was here to testify. I do not have that with me right now.
Okay. Is that something that with respect to this question, is that something that you will undertake to provide to this committee in writing?
Within 48 hours, I could probably.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. So today, right before I have a question about some news that was reported today, but I am curious about the total amount of money that your company received from the Government of Canada for the app, for the ArriveCan app.
For the specific component we were responsible for the application?
Yes.
Yep. So, GC Strategies we've invoiced about $44 million over the past 2 years for all of our federal work. Yep. With over 20 departments. But the component of the application, we were responsible for staffing, which included 2 years of support, maintenance, and over 150 releases on 3 platforms. We were approximately billed $4.5 million per year.
Okay. Today, the CEO of a company called ThinkOn said that his company had nothing to do with ArriveCan. This is reported in the Globe and Mail, and it says, quote, "We have received no money from CBSA," and, quote, "We're not even remotely in that space," end quote. So our understanding is that your organization facilitated the design and build of this app and connected all the components. So what role did ThinkOn play?
So first, sorry, Honourable Speaker, we are an IT staffing firm. We actually have no influence whatsoever in day-to-day activities or have any influence on how it's architected or how it's built. We provided a team that they asked for that designed a specific ArriveCan component. I cannot comment on anything outside of the bit that we were facilitating for the government.
Are you aware of the government reported in response to a question tabled by a member in the House of Commons that for work on ArriveCan, a company called ThinkOn Inc. received a $1.2 million contract. Were you aware of that?
Again, I cannot comment. I was not part of that, and I was not aware of that.
You weren't aware?
No.
Okay. So in terms of the total cost of the app, when the government reported that $1.2 million was given there, does that cause you concern that they said that $1.2 million went to a company that now says they didn't receive $1.2 million?
The reality is, I can only comment on what I was responsible for and what we engaged on. That's what I have knowledge of. I cannot comment on things that I wasn't part of.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And our concern here is to find out, if someone is saying that they were paid, that an organization was paid $1.2 million, and then that organization said that they didn't receive $1.2 million, that there's a lie there, and we've got to source that. We've got to figure that out. The committee passed a motion requiring documents to be turned over, a list of contractors, subcontractors, breakdown of costs, a list of contracts, all RFPs, invoices. Do you have that? Are you in receipt of that request for documents?
Well, sorry, we were contacted on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I think you have to have 5 days to even submit information,
Right.
which didn't fall in place. But we were never told we had to provide anything. We were just
Okay.
told that we had to be here for testimony.
Okay. Are you willing to provide the committee with the documents that I just referenced?
Well, my understanding was the government. You've asked the federal government to provide those for you?
Right, and so we find ourselves in a situation where we're checking people's homework, unfortunately.
Okay.
The government's saying one thing, and now we're looking to the private sector to find out what was paid. And so things like total amount received from the government of Canada for the app, a number which you've referenced, that the names of all subcontractors, delivery partners, how much they were paid, deliverables, proof that some subcontractors have security clearances, and that all work was done in Canada. Is that information that you'd be able to provide to this committee?
I can speak on behalf of it right now. Okay. So
I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt, and we're going to go to our next round with Mr. Housefather, but I'm sure we can get back to it next round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for coming. So if I understand this correctly, you are a company that does what many companies in the industry do, right? You don't retain employees on staff because you don't know what projects you're going to have. You have a large group of people that are experts in certain subject matters, and you assemble them for your clients when and if the client has a project. Would that be accurate to say?
that's accurate.
And is that and do many companies, including in the private sector, use firms like yours to develop large-scale applications like ArriveCan?
Yes, they do.
Perfect. And so when you are approaching, and let me start by asking, did any politician ever come to you and say, you know, let's negotiate a contract, or was it always staff members of a department?
It was the staff members of the department that came and engaged us on a conversation.
And have you ever negotiated anything with anybody who was a public office holder, or was it only staff?
Only staff.
Perfect. And when the staff came to you and said, hey, can you go out and assemble this great group of people, did they say anything like, please make sure you get liberal donors and liberal supporters to be the people that come work for us?
Nope, that was never happened.
It was a completely apolitical decision where you assembled the best possible team that you could assemble.
Yeah, I mean, they came to us because we have a proven track record of providing these skill sets and teams for them to review.
And as you stated, the team that you assembled, they delivered what they were supposed to deliver on time.
Yeah, they never missed a deadline and completed over 150 releases in 2 years.
And let me ask another question. On this project, I think you said you built, related to ArriveCan, approximately $4.5 million each year, so about $9 million total.
Yes.
That is not profit to you, right? That is your cost, where you are getting money from the government and you are paying the people that you engaged to work on this project, correct?
Yeah. We were not given $9 million. We have billed $9 million through a time and material engagement.
Exactly. And as you said, your markup was in industry standard levels?
Between 15 and 30%, yeah.
30%. Okay, perfect. I'm not going to pry further into that. Let me also understand, because you're saying that you didn't supervise the people. When you say that, you did supervise certain aspects of their task, right? You know, like for example, since you were the employer of record, you would have made sure that they got to work and they did, and they were doing the job that they were supposed to. You just weren't directing them as to the technical specifications they were supposed to build. Would that be correct?
Yes. So obviously, everybody was working during this pandemic. This is the whole reason we built this application. Everybody was working from home. But it was the project managers and the team leads provided by the organization that would be monitoring and maintaining and making sure we would only get called if they weren't performing and they needed to have a resource replaced.
And the manager of the team, for example, did you assemble just people who were working for a manager within the government, or did you also have a team manager of the people that you assembled?
There was a combination of both.
Combination of both.
Yeah.
So how many managers did you have amongst the people that you engaged of the contractors?
The employees or the...
Yeah, your employees,
Yep.
who were subcontractors to the government.
Yes.
How many people total was the team, and how many were managers?
Over the tenure, there were 5 or 6 subject matter firms that each had their project leads.
Each had their project lead. Okay, perfect. Now, I know that you guys are not technical, but you certainly, I imagine, understand enough about what was built to be able to distinguish between a hackathon where people, take plans that were already developed over the course of a weekend, don't build a back office that speaks to the CBSA system, don't build in the needs for vaccination proofs to come in versus what people did over 18 months of complex engineering. Could you speak to me about how we would best differentiate what happened over a weekend versus what you put a team together to create over 18 months? Like, for example, as somebody coming from the industry, the way I would look at it is almost you build the plans for a race car that can go 300 kilometers an hour, and the race car is set to the best safety standards. Mm-hmm. And then somebody, after 2 years of work on this, will copy the plans and build a model of the car that doesn't have to drive and doesn't need to meet safety standards. Would that be a fair analogy?
Yeah. I'm glad you referenced. I am not a technologist. I'm a generalist, but I fundamentally understand that. I know, again, what we were chaired to do. I know that we did a very good job and we executed on everything. But from what I read, there was the things that were mentioned that wasn't considered were my understanding. Again, we weren't part of that. Were some of the most intricate and most detailed pieces, which was, like you said, back-end integration. There's legacy systems that the organization has that needed work. There's the vaccinations. There was a lot of stuff that was way outside. I mean, there was a quote that I saw that we can all trace the Mona Lisa, right? Yeah. But it doesn't mean it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, so those who would try to paint what happened over a weekend versus the app that you helped the government of Canada develop, it would be a totally unfair comparison. It's not apples to apples. It's apples to an orchard, right?
Exactly, yes.
Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left, sir? 29 seconds. Well, given that I won't be able to finish any real question, that I just want to thank both of you for coming today. I know it's not easy coming before our parliamentary committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather. Mrs. Vinola for 6, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Firth, si je comprends.
Mr. Firth, if I've understood correctly. Mr. Firth, if I've understood correctly, you are the intermediary, and you received $4.5 million for your services. Were you directly involved in the production? I can't find the right word. In the programming of ArriveCan? Or was this done by the people you chose for the government who were responsible for programming ArriveCan?
All of this work was followed. We're an IT staffing firm. We are not involved. We have no direction on the projects or the objectives. We're not in any conversations for budgeting or cost controls. We have quality control, which is if a resource isn't performing, we will then work with the government to replace that. But to answer your question, our team, under the guidance and supervision of the federal government, was responsible for the programming, the development, and everything.
Okay.
But again, only certain aspects of ArriveCan, not the full overall build.
Combien de personnes est-ce que vous avez trouvé en tout et pour tout pour
Altogether, how many people did you find to work with you on ArriveCan?
During the 2 years, it scaled up and down. So the team can be anything from the lowest number was 17 or 18 up to 25 to 30.
Okay.
Okay. Yesterday, during question period, the Prime Minister said that of the $54 million reported in the media, there were future costs. Can you give me more information about what this expression future costs means?
I can comment on exactly what we did, which was, again, a component which was responsible for the mobile and web application, and subsequently the 150 releases plus that came out over the 3 years. So for the future costs would be maintaining the staff until, depending on if the pandemic comes back up and whatever the decision is to do with ArriveCan moving forward. But that the application still needs to be maintained while it's still in service.
Et ça, c'est...
And that's your responsibility to maintain the updates of ArriveCan as long as the application is necessary, if I've understood correctly. You're the one who has to do that?
Again, the team that we provided that was approved by the federal government and takes direction from them, yet that would be part of their tasks and deliverables that the government outlined for each individual resource.
OK.
Okay. So we're talking about $54 million. You were telling us that you received $4.5 million per year over 2 years. So that's a total of $9 million in contracts. Now, were you hired directly, or was there a call for tenders so that several companies could offer their services?
Yeah, so the government came to us and asked us to put together a team to help them carry out their COVID objectives. We did this process and it continued for about 2 years.
OK. Donc, un fournisseur unique.
So you were sole supplier.
The contract was a sole supplier, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the engagement was, and why they chose us, my understanding is we'll be asking the same question to CBSA and PSBC, is like as previous president, we're good at what we do. We have a proven track record working with the government and other projects, providing best-in-class talent.
Okay.
We had already been engaged with them since early 2019 and had provided a team on projects with similar skill sets and knew they could
Yes.
deliver.
Merci.
Thank you. Of the $54 million that the newspapers reported on, as I've mentioned, $9 million of that was granted to you, as we know. Do you think that $54 million for the entire ArriveCan program, including advertising, training here and abroad, is a cost which is unreasonable? Or, given the situation, is this perhaps high but reasonable? Or is this an extremely reasonable cost?
I can only really speak of the component that we staffed for the government. And again, they never missed a deadline. They worked over 150 releases across 3 platforms and maintained all of those for 2 years. So I think the $9 million that we charged was value for money.
À travers le monde, est-ce que vous connaissez d'autres entreprises qui ont été...
Are you familiar with any other companies who were approached in any other countries to do essentially the same job that you did for Canada?
No, I'm assuming they just were not considered because they don't have valid Government of Canada security clearances, which are put out in PSPC as obligatory for any government contract.
Quelle faille que vous voyez dans l'espèce...
What problems do you see with the ArriveCan clone that was done in 2 days, if there is any shortcoming in that? What's the difference between that clone that was done for a marketing purpose and what your teams were able to produce?
And I'm going to interrupt here because we're at 6 minutes. If we don't have time for an answer for our next round, maybe you can provide that to the committee in writing. Mr. Johns, for 6 minutes, please.
Sorry, just again, can you clarify how many employees you have?
We have 2 employees.
The 2 of you. Okay. And so, and you live here in Ontario, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, any of your contractors, do they work outside of Canada?
No.
Not a single, not a subcontractor. No one's outside of Canada. Okay.
They all have Canadians.
Okay. Okay. Now, in terms of the commission, you talked about, is that commission based on the $9 million? You're in the 15 to 30% of the $9 million.
Yep.
Can you give us an idea? Are you up in the 30 or the 15?
It's I cannot give you the exact numbers. I mean, my finance system doesn't go as intricate as that, but it's between. That's why I try to give you a bracket.
Sure. So you made between, my math is 1.35 million to 2.7 million between the 2 of you. You can't tell me what number in between that.
They,
I mean, I usually pretty know, like most people know how much they made.
Yep. So no, that would be accurate. That would be accurate. I mean, pre-tax, of course. Sure.
Okay. Okay. And that's over 2 years, the 2 of you. Okay. Are you doing other contracts as well on top of this?
Yep. We, what I mentioned previously.